How's it going? Welcome back to another great video. Today's video is not like the rest, okay? And I'm very excited to talk about this because it's been on my mind for a long time. So we are going to be tackling the subject of metaphysics and the philosophy of metaphysics, breaking down exactly what is metaphysics for those who don't know and how you can utilize it in your own life, how it can make you connected and in touch with the universe and God. So I do hope you enjoy today's video. And if you want a basis of, my philosophical videos, please do check out the video, The History of Philosophy. It's on my philosophy playlist. I would highly recommend it. And if you like this type of content and you're new, do consider subscribing. It would mean so much to me. It just takes 2 seconds, but we're getting close to 10k awakened wise ones, so do become a wise one and subscribe. And if you're here because of the gaming content, that's fine. I hope you learned something from this as well. I do both gaming and the kind of philosophical video essays, so I do hope you enjoy this, and let's just get into it.
We've been waiting for you.
Have you? You seem...
Big?
Yeah, we're big boys.
Big boys.
Big boys. Try and keep up, mate.
Captain's log, stardate 41263.3. Instead of returning to our own galaxy, the Enterprise has gone forward to a place in the universe which is uncharted and unknown.
And before we get into this discussion of metaphysics, I will just quickly say, do consider supporting my work here. If you are a fan of the gaming stuff and you want more gaming video essays or early reviews, or you're a fan of my more dystopian videos or my philosophical series, please just support what I do and join as a member or consider donation on PayPal. That's how I can keep doing this. But yeah, today's going to be a relaxed video, so grab yourself a cup of tea, okay? I am a British man, so that's my go-to comfort, or a snack, and just sit back and relax as we discuss what is metaphysics and the philosophy of metaphysics, how you can implement metaphysics in your own life to make a better you and a better world for everyone around you. And to me, that's why philosophy is so important. It's the thing that I care about most in life. It's what I'm trying to develop myself. I'm trying to create my own philosophy. At the moment, I'm just researching all of the different types of philosophical schools so I can really, kind of pick and choose where my ideas, want to go and what I want to kind of focus on. But philosophy to me is the most important thing for humanity, because the unexamined life is not a life worth living. I think it was Socrates who said that. But it's very important because without philosophy, we don't actually question the why of things. We are living in a scientific-based world now, and most people are atheists and nihilistic, and I do think that causes a lot of problems. But if you learn deeply about the universe, just like, the Buddhists have done for thousands of years, just like, the Taoists or the ancient Greeks, if you understand and learn the universe, the greater understanding and love and compassion you will have for your fellow human beings. And that's how we get closer to truth, because we realize that we're all actually the same, and then we can stop the kind of tribalistic thinking that is keeping us separate. And I think that's why it's so important, because it strips away all of this material external world that we live in that causes so many problems.
Interesting.
So what? It's some kind of guinea pig?
We don't know what it is. We've done so many tests on it. Could be anything, to be honest.
Can you stop?
Well, how else can we test it?
Test what?
Yeah, what are we testing?
If he enjoys this.
Oh, yeah.
I'm pretty sure he doesn't enjoy it.
But how do you know? The experiment may express joy in a different way from us.
Yeah, he might like it.
So in this video, I hope to basically give you a basis of what metaphysics is, and then talk about the hard problem, which is consciousness, okay? And my own personal beliefs and what I've managed to discover myself on my own research and my own philosophical insights about consciousness and what it means to be a human being in this crazy universe. So metaphysics is basically the precursor to scientific knowledge, okay? You cannot have scientific reason without the basics of metaphysics, okay? It's the fundamental bedrock, okay? And this was basically founded around the early Greek period, I would say. The ancient Greeks were the first culture to really emphasize the importance of examining your will, your thoughts, the actual fundamental nature of existence. I know a lot of people are just caught up in their day-to-day lives, and that's fair enough, but you have to understand that you are simply a primitive biological monkey, but we've been giving the gift from God, from the universe, the power of true high-level conscious experience, okay, and self-awareness and rationality. We can choose to a degree how we use that, and that's what makes this experience absolutely crazy, because that's all it is at the end of the day. We are just simply experiencing this tiny slice of perception within the greater universe. We are simply matter. So it could have been around the period of the ancient Greeks, but also it could have been before that. But around that time, metaphysics started to emerge, and it was basically just looking at the reasoning as to why. You know, why does anything exist? Why do we have experiences? Why does the sun rise? Without ever questioning, we would never get the answers, and we would never be such a progressive and, you know, like a technological race where we are at this point in time. We would never advance to that period if we never actually questioned the fundamental nature of existence and how we can utilize the elements to our advantage, because that's what we're good at, I guess. And killing each other and basically just, you know, going apeshit over basically arbitrary things, which doesn't matter because, like I said, we're all the same and we should all just learn to understand one another, and with greater understanding can come greater peace. So metaphysics is one of the core branches of philosophy, and if you want to know what the core branches are, like I said, check out my History of Philosophy Part 1. Part 2 is coming eventually. I've just got a lot of pressure around that video because it was very well received, which I'm very happy about. Not a lot of people watched it, but the people who did really loved it. I think that's like my most liked video. And, you know, with the gaming content, I do enjoy that type of things, and especially the games that I love analyzing. But to me, this is what I'm most passionate about. So I really want to make that video the best video it can possibly be. So part 2 is coming, but in the part 1, I do talk about the different branches. So metaphysics really comes down to understanding what is the fundamental nature of existence and reality, if we can even get to that point, or if it always changes based on perception, which is my personal belief. But Aristotle was kind of the first philosopher to really emphasize the importance of this, and he kind of laid the bedrock of metaphysics, and then science came after, and of course lots of other beliefs and philosophy. So let's break it down into 2 simplistic understandings. We have the first cause, and these are the fundamental truths that we cannot change. For example, the fact that most of the universe is made from matter and antimatter. We necessarily can't change that. That is just fundamentally how the universe seems to be made. And the second cause is, of course, the examination of existence itself. And then there's a separate branch called special metaphysics, which sounds, I'm a little bit special. I've got big brain energy. The definition of will, and basically, you know, free will, if it exists or not, morality, and the kind of human psychology aspects and all that kind of stuff. So science is looking simply at empirical evidence, okay? And metaphysics is looking at the reason and the why to that evidence, or why, you know, these circumstances can even come into existence, okay? So science often drops, you know, big questions because it simply doesn't know the answer to them. And to me, that's why society has kind of crumbled in the last, 100 years or so, because society and culture is so rooted around a scientific understanding of existence, and that's all that we care about. And that's good because it's basically made our society, fundamentally more truthful, and, well, it used to before social media, and the way we kind of emphasize logic to be most important, and I think that it's very good, because as a Stoic myself, rationality is the most important thing. Dropping metaphysics, dropping philosophical schools, and the study of philosophy. Like I said, it used to be a way of life, now it's just an academic subject. To me, that has really plagued humanity, and science has also caused the death of religion and philosophy. Even though it's not necessarily a religion, it does have spiritual elements to it. It does have a mystique element to it, because there are simply things that we do not know, and scientific reason and logic can sometimes shut out those questions and also, lead humanity astray into nihilism and just kind of self-doubt and just this kind of dark abyss of there is no reason to anything. And it couldn't be further from the truth the more you look into these types of subjects. So do universals exist? Okay, that is what metaphysics likes to ask the most. Things like time and the perception of time. Where can we actually fundamentally look at the moment? Can we slice down the exact point where this moment changes into the future, or when it changes from the past to present? Of course we can't. If you look down at the subatomic elements, if you strip it down to the metaphysical subatomic elemental elements, is that even possible? As far as we know, it's not. Looking at these structures is very important to understanding why we exist and what is our purpose and role in this universe, and how we can basically, make it the best possible good for everyone and nature around us. And that's why personally I subscribe to the school of Stoicism, because it's all about rationality and living in accordance with nature and doing the most good you can possibly do in your lifespan for your fellow human. So when we ask, do universals exist, we know that we have shared perceptions, and also scientific research has looked into the brain, and I'm going to talk about that more in just a second, and there is no part of our brain that actually links, shared perception experiences. For example, the way we view things, the way we understand color or beauty, okay, these experiences cannot actually fundamentally exist within the biological restraints of the brain, which is very interesting. You have to ask, do universals actually exist, or is it simply a perception, or is there something else going on in the metaphysical realm that we just do not understand? Rationalism often leads to the strong belief in empirical scientific evidence, which isn't necessarily bad by itself, but if you go down this rabbit hole too much, which modern day society has, this also leads to atheism, and this often leads to nihilism. That's where I see the branch, okay, the philosophical kind of branch of where we are now, and I don't think it's ideal, okay? It's kind of like Yoda saying, jealousy leads to hate, or fear leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering, or something like that. That's my own version, and I think it's very true, because when I look around at the modern world, that seems to be most prevalent, okay? And I'm not saying that you need to be a Bible basher, I'm not saying that you need to get down on your knees and praise the Lord every single day, but by delving into philosophy, understanding, what nature truly is and how you are a part of that natural experience, and you are literally made of the same things that everything is made out of. Existence itself, consciousness itself is the actual fabric of the universe and creation, okay? And I just think people limit themselves too much on scientific reason, and we need reason and scientific evidence, of course. I'm not disputing that, and I'm not saying that you should be tribal in your thinking. That's everything that I stand against with, religion. That is one negative of religion, is that tribalistic way of thinking, my God is better than your God. But what you do need to understand is the sense of oneness, and if people can learn that and tap into that, then I think that humanity will really progress. Many schools of philosophy exist, like Taoism, Stoicism, Buddhism, Shintoism, and I subscribe to many of these. Shintoism, since I'm living in Japan, the way of the Shinto, and Buddha, of course, and Stoicism. But these schools are actually quite similar in their way of understanding the fundamental truth of, nature and accepting the things that are in your control and outside of your control, letting go of externals, understanding that your ego is simply resistance and that you are almost a construct of the universe, and your personality is constantly changing. Think about it. Are you the same person that you were when you were a child? No, you're not, okay? We are constantly evolving creatures. So metaphysics is very key in understanding these questions. Without metaphysics, none of these schools of philosophy would exist. Science wouldn't exist. And, looking at the fundamental nature of reality is very important, because that is how we progress things like medicine and technology. So it's very important to look at universal truths, and that's what metaphysics tries to do. But whereas some people might be, rationalists and they believe only in physical, I do not, okay? So that is the key difference, and I'm going to discuss that in just a second. There is no doubt in my mind that physical things do exist. I don't think that, existence itself is purely the mental, okay, and the perceptions of that existence. But I do think that perceptions of that existence fundamentally shapes the reality that we are living in. For example, a human being living in this world has a very different perception of life and experience than, say, a common housefly, or a dog, or your cat, or a goddamn space turtle, or a goddamn giant space octopus that probably lives somewhere in the universe since it's infinite. Our perceptions create the experience, but if you strip it down into its molecular, form of atoms, protons, electrons, all that kind of stuff, these things do exist, but perhaps they are living in a dualist state, because we know from scientific research and evidence that the perception of these elements can sometimes actually change the kind of particle itself, which is absolutely insane. So it's not unreasonable to think that we live in a dualist state, and I think that is the most rational, place to stand when understanding the universe. That is where you should ground your knowledge. That is what I believe in my own current philosophy, and of course you are open to your own perceptions. But I think it's unlikely that it is purely just physical. It's the same for absolutely everything. And the idea of everything just being a mental state, I do believe in a shared consciousness, but I do think that we have our individual, ergos and egos. Egos, I mean, and personalities. Otherwise, why are you literally not the same person as the, guy next door, your neighbor, or your friend? You are fundamentally different people, but you share the same consciousness. Does that make sense? So those are just my theories. I explained the fundamentals of what metaphysics is, the philosophy behind metaphysics, philosophy explained, I hope, and then I gave you my own personal theories and what my own personal beliefs are. So now let's tackle some special metaphysical problems and talk about the hard problem, which is consciousness. So I personally don't believe in free will. I do think that the universe is already predetermined for us, especially if you subscribe to the theory of infinite universes, which is now very popular thanks to media. I was actually on that shit way before Hollywood picked it up, but doesn't matter. I'm sure a lot of people who were focused in the scientific community were. And, string theory, I can't pretend I understand it, but it makes the most logical sense that there is an infinite, universe. We might be living in that infinite universe, or they might be separated. So since everything that possibly can happen has already happened, or will happen, or is currently happening, I do not believe in free will. I think it is already predetermined, especially if you deconstruct time and if you strip away the human experience from time. But I'm open to the idea of free will. I'm just not sure, and I'm leaning towards it being predetermined. So why would any conscious experience emerge from simple matter? Neurons firing at each other, electrons rubbing against each other, all of this crazy shit that happens. Why would any of that actually emerge into this conscious experience? And why do we identify throughout human history before we even had metaphysics science, why have we always had that innate feeling of the mind and body being somehow different? Well, that's because it is. Now, if you aren't a dualist and you only believe in the physical, you will argue that everything is experienced in the brain and the brain creates consciousness. But the scientific data and evidence does not support that whatsoever. In fact, in all of biology, there's never reference to consciousness because we simply cannot correlate the brain to creating consciousness. I do think it is a dualist state existence where consciousness does exist because of the brain, but not just because of the brain, but because of the will and the will of the universe. If you think about consciousness as a blanket form of existence, okay, everything has the potential to reach consciousness. And if you have the engine, which is your brain, then that perception of consciousness can then emerge. Think about your identity, your personality. This is constantly evolving and adapting, and this is a process between your brain and higher consciousness, okay, or God if you want to use that terminology. Now I'm going to just quickly reference a study by Wilder Penfield, okay, I think that's how you pronounce his name, sorry if I butchered it, but basically he was studying the brain and, you know, hooking up patients to this kind of electrical system which would stimulate the brain by placing certain electrodes to the brain, and he found, of course, he could stimulate the body's response. He could even stimulate, you know, people's memories. They would remember things that they had forgotten. They would involuntarily, you know, speak or scream or, you know, kind of kick their leg or whatever. But in this study, there was never any evidence of influencing the person's beliefs, the will, and the thoughts of that person, okay? That cannot be changed. Also, scientific research has emerged showing that the focus of the mind, the will, okay, you know, having willpower is actually a very powerful thing. And people like me who suffer from anxiety disorder, CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, actually fundamentally changes the way your brain chemistry works. So by using your own willpower, by using your conscious experience, you can fundamentally change your own brain chemistry and how your brain operates, which to me is absolutely insane. Also, further studies with people with personality identity disorder, multiple personality disorder, I mean, basically, you know, each personality would actually have different biological experiences. For example, one personality might experience that their legs do not work or that their eyes are not working properly, and this would actually show results in the brain chemistry and how the brain actually operates depending on the will and the personality. So if you strip it down, you cannot say that consciousness is actually created from the brain and the neurons just firing at each other and that's all it is, simple chemistry, okay? It just doesn't work like that. In between consciousness and the brain, there is something else going on in the metaphysical dimension, in a different dimension, in a different realm, where conscious experience exists in between that point, between the neuron connection and the process of thought, you know, how your brain chemistry works and how it's intertwined with your body. Conscious experience then emerges, okay? Or conscious experience is already present, but because it has the connection point, you know, the engine, the fuel, your brain, to make that conscious experience, you know, actually take place. That's how consciousness, as I understand it, seems to work. And of course, I can't say and of course, I'm not here saying I've figured out consciousness, guys. Wow, this YouTuber over here has figured out what consciousness actually is. But to me, that is what the scientific evidence shows so far. It's simply not just your brain. There is some kind of higher metaphysical realm / dimension where consciousness can take place, or it is already fundamentally existing and not existing, if that makes any sense. There is no empirical data that shows that the mind is made from the brain. So that is why I believe in a dualist state, and that is why I believe the power of meditation and many other things. I don't believe in magical crystals or anything like that, but I do think that we should take a deeper look at the science, at philosophy, and how we can then learn about the universe and have a greater understanding. That to me is the most important thing in life, and I'm so happy to actually share this video with you guys. I'm not sure that many people will watch this. I'm sure it's not going to get as many views, but I don't care. If you are enjoying this, if you enjoyed this, then that just means the world to me. I hope that you can continue your journey and, you know, maybe subscribe to my philosophy that I'm trying to create here. Join the movement, the RUER. I'm trying to implement, you know, kind of ancient culture and the philosophy of the ancient Roman Empire into a modern day movement. So if that interests you, then do subscribe and keep learning, and yeah, just let go, try to let go, and perhaps don't take your perceptions as seriously as you are. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.